Haruto is a smelly, disgusting rat with no friends, and also completely useless to society. My dude is down bad all the time, and all he likes doing is playing video games and watch anime inside his stinky apartment, slowly counting the days until Truck-kun pays him a visit. He explains to us how he is bullied every day at school, and every time he transfers to a new school, the same thing happens there, because of his unfortunate ugly genetics which not even looks and guides can help with. And he's also from a poor family, so he wears the same thing every day. He nearly calls it quits, and was about to end it all. But while chilling on his game station, he was sucked inside the screen. And here, a cute and bubbly blonde goddess with some amazing juicy jugs appears in front of Haruto, and congratulates him on winning the reincarnation spot and asks why he wanted to be reincarnated. But Haruto can't think with these giant balloons bouncing around, so she tries standing still for him, and after Haruto tells her he just wants a peaceful life, where he can binge watch anime and video games in peace. But the goddess refuses this request, as this was what killed him in the first place, so instead she offers to reincarnate him in another world, and he will be given maximum overpowered abilities gifted from the gods, and he will be born with level 1002 mana inside him. But this means being born again with new parents, and he will be a newborn baby. Moments after, we have a change of scenes, where we see a newborn baby being born into a royal family. And Haruto can't believe how beautiful his parents look. And my dude gets mad excited as he thinks he will grow up to be some Giga Chad playboy, and finally pulls up this. However, as soon as this little rascal was born, the father immediately tells them to start the magical assessment right away, to see what their newborn baby's power level is. The king suspects it should be shockingly high, as this is not any ordinary baby, as this is the son of two powerful noble mages, named Princess Gaislot and the King Jilk, who only had this baby in celebration of his wife who defeated the Dark Demon Lord. So they suspect they will be rewarded with an astonishing level 40, or even a level 50 mana baby, after the mysterious sorcerer guy, holding the magical detecting crystal ball, informs the couple that unfortunately their son is only at a level 2. This completely shocks the King Jilk, who stands there in horror and is absolutely disgusted by this little freak he squirted into his beloved wife, and regrets the 9 months he waited for him to pop out after hearing this kid only has a magic level of 2. He orders his people to spread the word that his new baby has unfortunately passed away during labor, and bro faked his son's death, as no magic equals no love. He orders the entire kingdom to mourn for them right now. After, we see the goddess of reincarnation back in the heavens above, and here, she tells her assistant that even though she made Haruto the most overpowered thing in the world, nobody will even know he's the strongest one, because in that particular realm, they don't even have the same number counts like we have, and they only use a double-digit counting system, as they're not that advanced yet. So instead of being level 1002 like she promised, everyone in that world will only see the number 2 at the end, making him appear as the lowest ranked mage across the entire nation, which makes the goddess upset, and she feels sorry for our boy Haruto for putting him through this, as now, even his own parents have disowned him within minutes of being born into the new world. After seeing the princess and king arguing about what to do with this little specimen, the sorcerer crystal ball dude suggested that instead of killing the boy, they can just abandon him and leave him to rot in the middle of a forest. Moments after, the boy wakes up in the forest, and here, he states how as he is only just a baby, there's not a lot he can do, but as he's the strongest magician ever, he feels the power of mana rushing through him, which he can use to his advantage. Haruto devises a plan to rescue himself from the forest, but since he's only a baby and can't move, it makes things a lot more difficult than it needs to be. However, he remembers that he does have magic, so he tries staring at the sky, and starts to think of some protection barrier magic, and he starts off by creating a cube. After seeing that he just spawned a cube out of nowhere, he's surprised how complex it is, and how easy it was to create. So he also tries experimenting with different objects and shapes, and his possibilities are endless. After messing around with the magic, he tries using the cube on himself so he can get out of the forest, and right then he puts himself inside the cube and can levitate and move around, which fills him with excitement that he can actually survive and get to safety. But just as things seem to be going well, a giant wolf suddenly appears and tries to challenge Haruto. She warns the baby that she can sense high amounts of mana coming from her territory, and wants to show him that she's the beast of the forest. She tries to bite her, but Haruto creates a protective barrier around her, and right after creates many other cubes and throws them at the wolf, but they don't do anything, and she laughs at him for being a weak level 2 wizard. after mocking Haruto. This time he uses the magic cubes to pick up some trees and attacks again, and although it was more damage, the wolf still has incredible strength and gets back up, and calling the baby a pathetic wannabe mage, and that he can't damage her enough. So this time, Haruto uses his magic to lift up parts of the ground and levitates a huge boulder, about to attack the beast. But as he moves the giant rock, the wolf starts talking, and surrenders and asks how he's able to do this kind of magic as a dumb level 2 baby. And Haruto is shocked that the wolf can actually talk like a human, and he realizes it's a girl wolf who sounds like an anime waifu. After her surrender, she talks to Haruto and she admits that she was only out here hunting for easy prey to regain her ma and become stronger, but she cannot even defeat this small little baby. So she proceeds to ask Haruto why he's so powerful already, and the aura surrounding him is more like an adult, like he's already fully grown and much more wiser than any creature she's ever come across. But Haruto cannot say any words, as he's only a newborn child. So to fix this problem, Haruto uses the magic cubes again, and this time he activates his voice box, so he can talk right away. He explains to her how he's actually the new child of the king and queen from the capital city far away from here, and that he was abandoned by them all for being a level 2 mage. And the wolf is shocked and realizes he must be the demon king reincarnate. Right after, she admits her defeat and wants no beef with the demon baby, so she tells him that he can kill her right now and be done with it. But Haruto laughs, and told the wolf that everything is okay as long as she doesn't try to attack him ever again. She then calls Haruto her master, and he replies calling her Flay, and she immediately gets soaking wet that her master gave her a cute nickname, and she tells Haruto that she will be his subordinate from this day, until the end of her days. But the boy is confused as to why she's treating him like a god. Surprised by his mercy, she swears on her name as a flame Fenrir to keep her word. Haruto bids her farewell, calling her Flay, but she interprets this as him naming her, seeing it as a pact. She pledges her loyalty to him. Haruto clarifies he simply shortened her name, but Flay ignores him. Suddenly, Haruto feels weak and collapses to the ground. Flay wonders what's wrong, and it turns out he requires sustenance. He says he needs some milk, and Flay ends up transforming into a human form. Haruto is embarrassed seeing her without anything on, so she puts on a suit, but Haruto thinks it's just as bad. Flame prepares to give him her milk, but it turns out she doesn't have any. She suddenly hears someone approaching, wondering if she should take them out, but Haruto says they should try talking to them first. A man approaches them, and Flay asks him why he is there. The man says he is there for Haruto, but Flay refuses to hand him over. The man wonders about their relationship, and Flay tells him Haruto is her master. The man claims to be Haruto's relative and that he is there to save him. He reveals he even brought milk, and Haruto tells Flay to accept it, but she doesn't listen to him. She wonders why he is coming back for something they threw away. The man claims his wife was once pregnant, but the child didn't make it, so he doesn't care that Haruto was abandoned for being weak, and he thinks that every child should have the chance to have a life. Flay has moved hearing this, and the man finds it strange to see a demon cry. They come to a deal, and the man decides to take her in as well so she can stay by Haruto's side. After 9 years, Haruto has grown up with his new family. Initially, he planned to leave once he was old enough, but his family's kindness made him stay. However, his sister Charlotte doesn't get along with him. Flay acts as their maid, and Charlotte enjoys her company, often asking her to play. Flay insists on looking after Haruto, but he insists she plays with Charlotte. Reluctantly, they go outside, and Charlotte chases Flay around. Watching from inside, Haruto's mother advises him not to worry, explaining that Charlotte is still learning how to interact with boys. Haruto fears it's because Charlotte can sense his true age, nearing 30, making him feel like an old man. His mother suggests he should do something special to prove himself reliable and win Charlotte's favor, but Haruto doubts his social skills. She believes, as their heir, he should engage more with others instead of staying in his room all the time. Haruto heads back to his room, and he thinks he should leave before his parents start demanding more from him. But he thinks Charlotte would hate him even more if he took Flay away, and he knows that Flay would never agree to stay behind. We see he has created a clone of himself using his barrier magic so he can one day replace himself, but he hasn't been able to make it move or talk. His father knocks on his door, and they go out to the yard where his father wants to start teaching him how to use the sword. He isn't interested in learning, but his father tells him that since he has such low levels of mana, he should develop his other skills. Haruto wants to just relax, but his father insists he gives it a go. Haruto knows his father is an experienced warrior, so he thinks he doesn't stand a chance. He casts his barrier to protect himself, and he charges at his father, even breaking his sword. His father is shocked seeing the damage he caused, and he tells Haruto to try and avoid his attack. He swings at him, but Haruto manages to dodge it. His father can't believe this, and he says it should have been impossible for anyone under level 30 to dodge. And Haruto also finds this strange. We find out that Haruto attempted to test his power using a stronger crystal ball, hoping for a higher level. But it still only displayed 2. He believes reaching 4 digits is impossible since the highest human level ever recorded was only 77. This leaves him pondering over the powers bestowed upon him by the goddess. That night, Haruto's father confides in his wife about Haruto's sword training session, expressing concern that Haruto might be a demon. His wife is taken aback by this revelation. He mentions hidden records documenting a royal family lineage mixed with demons, some born with demonic traits. Although his wife sees Haruto as a normal boy, they ponder why Flay, a demon, is so obedient to him. Nonetheless, he reassures his wife that Haruto is still their son and will lead a happy life. However, Charlotte is shocked to learn her brother might be a demon. Haruto was chilling in his room when he heard a lot of noise outside. He peeked through his barriers and saw some soldiers who were hurt. Curious, he asked his dad what happened. His dad said that thieves had been attacking their land. They found the thieves' hideout but were surprised. His dad thought it was tough for Haruto to see, so he told him to go back inside. Flay called them weak for losing to thieves, which made Haruto angry. He told her to be quiet. As he walked by, he used his barriers to heal the wounded soldiers quickly, astonishing everyone. His dad was puzzled. Later, Haruto found Flay waiting for him. She didn't speak, remembering his earlier command. Haruto said sorry for snapping at her and let her talk again. They head outside, and Haruto uses his barriers to look for the thieves that attacked his father. He is quickly able to find them and plans to wipe them out, as he uses his barrier to fly to their location. At that moment, we see Charlotte watching them as they leave. We see the thieves celebrating their victory while their boss discusses their plans to return to their homeland. Haruto suddenly appears, and he instantly freezes them with his barriers. One of the men tries to talk back, but Haruto instantly blows him away. The boss ends up confessing everything, revealing that they are actually soldiers from the neighboring empire. Their goal was to cause chaos in the kingdom, and they even revealed they had someone helping them on the inside. Haruto wonders if there is someone after his father's life, but the men don't know anything else. The men ask to be spared, but Haruto tells them they messed up by attacking his father, so Flay ends up burning the entire base. He ends up sending an anonymous letter to his father about what he learned. His father is surprised to learn that the Empire is involved, and Charlotte wonders who took out the bad guys, and he can tell that it must have been Flay's doing. Charlotte suddenly gets up and explains there is somewhere she needs to go. As she leaves the office, she thinks about what she saw the previous night. She asks Flay if there are 2 Harutos, but Flay is confused about what she is talking about. She reveals she saw them leaving, but she knows Haruto shouldn't have enough mana to fly, so she checked in his room, and she ended up finding his clone sleeping in his bed. She notes that it didn't have his usual scary aura, so she wonders what it all means. Flay is impressed to hear that Charlotte can sense her brother's strength, and she explains just how powerful he really is. But she tells her not to think too much about it. Flay ends up reporting her encounter to Haruto, and he can't believe she already found out about his clone. He decides to set up extra surveillance on her so he can keep tabs on what she is up to. Over the next few days, we see Charlotte following him around, no matter where he goes. Charlotte watches him, even when he's in the bath, and when he tries to confront her, she just runs away. After a week, we learn that his mother and Charlotte are going on a trip to the annual festival. Haruto tells them they should take Flay along, but his mother mentions that Flay hasn't been around, and Haruto remembers how he told Flay to intimidate the monsters in the forest so they don't attack any towns. Later on, Haruto's alarm goes off, and he realizes it's the surveillance he put on Charlotte. We see that their carriage was attacked by Imperial soldiers, and Charlotte is carried away by her mother, Natalia. The men chase after them, casting their magic, but Natalia manages to block it. Though she gets hit in the leg, Charlotte suddenly hears a voice and directs her mother to run. Natalia wonders who's giving the directions, but they end up at a cliff. Charlotte tells her to jump, and they manage to make it down by using magic. They find a cave, but Natalia thinks it's too bright to be able to hide. Natalia decides to go out to find the person who was giving them directions, saying they must be a hero of justice. She tells Charlotte to stay quiet and quickly heads off. As she leaves the cave, the entrance is hidden by some illusion magic. But at that moment, the soldiers catch up to her. Natalia thinks she can't let herself get captured, so she prepares to take her own life. However, her blade suddenly shatters as Haruto arrives just in time. He gets pissed off at the situation and instantly blows all of the soldiers away. He calls out for Charlotte, telling her to take care of her mother, but she is terrified, feeling his aura. She realizes it must be her brother, so she forces herself to see him. Haruto is surprised to hear her calling his name, and she asks if he is a hero of justice. He is confused by the question but decides to play along. Charlotte gets excited, thinking he uses his powers to defeat bad guys, and Haruto just agrees. She apologizes for not realizing his true identity, but Haruto tells her she needs to keep it a secret. At night, Haruto's father receives a report about what happened, and he wonders about the mysterious person who has been helping them. He asks Haruto if he has any ideas, but he just says that the person should stay on their side as long as they behave. Charlotte and Natalia return, and Charlotte instantly hugs Haruto. She tells him how much she missed him, and their mother wonders when they became so close. Charlotte refuses to explain but just says that she loves him now. Haruto is happy about this, but Flay seems to get jealous of their new relationship. After that, Charlotte would barge into his room every day, asking to play. And he now has trouble dealing with her because she likes him too much. She wonders what he is doing, and he tells her he is keeping watch with his surveillance magic. She is impressed he can use ancient magic, calling him amazing, and Haruto says it's hard to learn since it's a lost magic. But Charlotte mentions that she has seen records about it, and she ends up taking him to their castle archive. Haruto is surprised to learn they had such a huge library, and Charlotte helps him grab some of the books. Haruto learns that his barrier magic is considered ancient magic, and he is surprised Charlotte has been reading these books. He thinks they would be too difficult for her, but she says that their father would normally read it to her. She tells him to do the same, sitting on his lap, and Haruto does his part as her big brother. They read that there are some gods that can travel between worlds, and Haruto thinks it sounds like a story from an anime. Charlotte wonders what he is talking about, but he insists on trying her best to listen. He explains it as drawings that can move, and he gets excited talking about it. She wishes she could also experience it, so Haruto decides to find a way for them to watch anime. After 2 weeks, Haruto manages to get access to the internet from Japan, and he finds that his old Netflix account still works. He creates a kid's account for Charlotte, and he lets her choose what she wants to watch. She picks a show about a magical girl, and she is amazed that the drawings can really move. She finds it amazing, but she isn't able to understand Japanese. Haruto thinks it would be hard for her to learn a language, but thinks she should be able to manage since she's still young. He starts teaching her the alphabet, and he is shocked she seems to have learned it after only 2 hours. After another 2 weeks, Charlotte barges in wanting to watch the latest episode of her favorite show. They have dinner together, and Charlotte seems to be nodding off. Their father wonders what Charlotte has been doing in his room, and Charlotte says they've been busy researching ancient magic. Their mother is happy to hear they're working together. After dinner, Charlotte follows him around, but he tells her she can't watch any more anime for the day, so she should just take a bath and go to sleep. We see Haruto taking a bath, and Charlotte ends up joining him. She thinks she should just go to sleep since she can't watch anime, and Haruto thinks she is starting to sound like an otaku. She notices the crest on his chest and she calls it his emblem, saying it's his proof he's an ally of justice. He thinks she has been watching too much anime, but he tells her to keep it a secret, saying that allies of justice must hide their identity. They say goodnight, and Haruto goes to bed, but Charlotte ends up sleeping with him, and we see their mother watching them, happy that they are getting along so well. But Haruto just wants his own space. The next day, their father leaves to subdue some thieves, and Charlotte worries for his safety. She gets depressed, but Haruto tells her not to be worried, saying their father will be fine. Charlotte tells him he should use his powers to fight the bad guys, begging him to go. And Haruto has no choice but to agree. She tells him he needs to transform just like in the anime, so Haruto ends up putting on a disguise. Haruto gets embarrassed, but Charlotte thinks he is so cool. She wants to go with him, but he says it's too dangerous, making her depressed. However, he gives her a way to watch his heroic deeds, and he quickly heads off. He looks around for the thieves, finding them in a cave, and he uses his barrier magic to seal them in. He arrives at their location, and the thieves wonder who he is. He calls himself an ally of justice, but the men try to rush at him. He's able to easily beat them all up, but he makes sure to go easy since Charlotte is watching. At that moment, his father arrives, wondering who he is. He makes up a random name, and his father wonders if he's the mysterious person who has been helping them out. He wonders what his goal is, and Haruto just explains that he's carrying out justice. He gets embarrassed with himself, so he quickly runs away. He can't believe himself, but Charlotte tells him he was super cool, wanting to see him fight again. And Haruto can't believe he has to keep doing it. But he ends up making a name for himself, and he becomes known as the Black Knight. After some time, Haruto seems to have perfected his clone thanks to the books from the library. His clone is now able to speak, but it acts too much like him and is just as lazy as him. Charlotte wakes up in his bed and she is confused seeing the two of them. They get called for a meeting, and Haruto thinks his clone can go in his place, but his clone refuses, and Haruto realizes it's useless. Their family goes out to greet their guests, and we meet the royal prince and princess, Elias and Marion. Haruto wonders if they are real siblings, but Elias is stuck up and super rude. Marion tells him to behave, but Elias says she can't boss him around since he's going to be the next king, so they aren't on the same level. Haruto can't believe he is so terrible, but Elias calls him out for staring at him. He knows Haruto is only level 2, so he decides to teach him a lesson, challenging him to a fight. Haruto thinks it's going to be a pain, but Elias thinks he is afraid, saying you will hold back. Haruto checks his level, seeing he is level 9 with a maximum of 40, and he compares it with his father and the princess. Elias charges at him, but he easily dodges him. Elias tells him not to run away, so Haruto uses his barrier to protect himself. He lets the prince beat him up, but Elias tells him to fight back, so he instantly attacks him from behind. Elias gets back up, but Haruto just keeps knocking him down. Marion doesn't believe he is only level 2, but Haruto's father just calls it a mystery. Elias refuses to lose, attacking with a fireball, but Haruto just absorbs it with his barrier. The prince keeps on attacking, but his spells have no effect. He wonders what's going on, and Haruto reveals that he absorbed all the fireballs, wondering if he should return them. And Elias falls to his knees. Haruto lets him off the hook, and he is just glad it's over. Marion apologizes for her brother, and she wonders if he is really level 2. Haruto confirms that he is, but he quickly excuses himself as he heads back to his room. He wonders if this incident will cause his real parents to come looking for him. We see Charlotte as she helps Haruto look for bad guys to take down. Flay returns, and she also wants to help out, but Haruto thinks she will end up causing trouble. He asks her about his other tasks for her, but she claims to have finished everything. Charlotte gets excited, wanting to see them team up, saying that every hero needs a partner. Seeing how excited they are, Haruto has no choice but to go along with it. He warns Flay that since Charlotte is watching them, she isn't allowed to use excessive violence. We see the group of thieves as they prepare to check out their haul, but Haruto makes his entrance, introducing himself as the Black Knight, and Flay follows suit, calling herself the Crimson Knight. The men are confused, and Flay attacks with her flame, setting them on fire. Haruto tries to remind her of his warning, but she doesn't listen and continues to throw fire, so he ends up stopping it with his barrier. Flay is confused by what's going on, and she prepares to use her full power, but Haruto suddenly smacks her, reminding her not to be so violent. She says she got carried away, but she tries to burn them again, and he smacks her again, telling her to head back while he handles the rest. Haruto becomes exhausted afterwards, but Charlotte says they were awesome. Flay wonders why her attack didn't work, thinking she'll need to use more power next time. Haruto doesn't want to do it again, but seeing how happy it made his sister, he considers this. Meanwhile, we see Elias as he wonders how Haruto defeated him when he's only level 2. We learn he was trying to assert dominance as the next king, but it didn't turn out the way he expected. His aide tells him to get ready for the banquet, and he suggests Elias to invite Charlotte to join him on their tour of the fields the next day. Elias doesn't care about her, but his aide tells him it's for his own good. Charlotte visits Haruto after the banquet, and we learn he sent his clone to take his place. His clone reminds him that they are the same, so he found the experience just as miserable. His clone can't handle being his double, and it jumps into bed. Charlotte worries for the clone, thinking it will have to go on the tour, but she notes she will also be going since Elias invited her. Looking at how tired his clone is, Haruto decides to be the one to go. Later at night, Haruto decides to check the route for their tour to make sure that it's safe for Charlotte. He finds a suspicious group that looks like they are summoning something, so he decides to go check it out. He rocks up to them, wondering what's going on, but the men are shocked to see him. They prepare their spells against him, but he easily takes them all out. One of the men activates the magic circle, summoning a bunch of skeletons. Haruto finds them creepy, but he easily takes them down with his sword. However, they get right back up, jumping onto him, but he easily blows them all away. They keep getting back up, but he notices a crystal on their chest. As the man orders them to attack, the skeletons suddenly turn around, and they start attacking the men instead. The leader summons a huge golem, crushing the skeletons, and it even manages to break through Haruto's barrier. He wonders how to deal with it, but he notices it also has a crystal on its chest, so he ends up attacking it, causing the golem to stop moving. The men wonder what's going on, but it also turns on them, and Haruto apologizes, saying he stabbed it with his barrier, which overrode its magic formula. Haruto ends up capturing them all, and he tries to ask the leader about their objective. The man refuses to talk, so Haruto gets the skeletons to dig a hole, and he threatens to bury all of them alive. The leader reveals he works for the Queen Consort, saying they were trying to summon monsters to assassinate Charlotte during the tour. Haruto wonders why they would target her, and the man reveals that the Queen is scared of her potential, knowing Charlotte will surpass her one day. He mentions that the Queen was also behind the bandit attacks, but since they failed twice, the Queen sent her personal summoner squad. Haruto thinks it's the same as when he was abandoned, and she's doing everything to protect her own position. Horror gets angry thinking about it, and the golem starts to go wild, grabbing onto the man. But Haruto stops it just in time. He refuses to lose the people he loves and decides to go against the Queen, even if she's his real mother. We see Flight keeping watch as the tour takes place. The ride is awkward, but Charlotte tries to cheer Elias up, telling him he shouldn't feel bad about losing to Haruto because he never even stood a chance. Marion joins in, saying it's not a big deal, but this only makes things worse. Haruto tells them to chill, but Elias thinks he didn't even use magic during their fight. Haruto explains he can buff himself to get stronger, but Elias and Marion are shocked to hear this. Haruto isn't aware it's a big deal, and Elias wonders if he's a returned demon. Haruto doesn't know what that means, but Charlotte explains that when a demon marries a human, their descendants can have demonic traits. Marion thinks it would explain his power, but she notes he doesn't have any horns and just looks like a normal boy. Charlotte vouches for the rest of his body, saying it's completely normal since she's bathed with him. But this just weirds them out, thinking he's a perv. Charlotte wonders if it's wrong, but they just try to explain that it's not common. They arrive at their destination, and they admire a wheat field. Charlotte runs off with Marion and Elias, while Haruto has a chat with his father. Haruto poses a hypothetical question, wondering what he would do if the Queen was after Charlotte's life. His father reveals he got a letter from the Black Knight when he was delivered the Queen's mages, so he knows the threat is real. He knows she sees him as her enemy, but he can't retaliate since she's the Queen. Haruto wishes she would disappear, but his father tells him the capital would fall into turmoil without her. He explains that the king fell from power long ago, and there are many nobles that try to take the throne, but the Queen keeps them all in check with her power. 2 years before Haruto was born, the king led an army against the Demon King, with the Queen Gisli among them, and she took out the Demon King by herself. She became a hero, and her marriage with the king was supported by everyone. But she's now trying to take the kingdom for herself. His father thinks there's nothing they can do unless someone more powerful could replace the Queen. He thinks Charlotte will easily become stronger than her, but she's still too young, so he tells Haruto to look out for her until she grows up. Flay volunteers to take out the Queen, but Haruto declines, saying it's a personal issue, so he wants to be the one to do it. He thinks the Queen will make another attempt on Charlotte's life soon, so he decides it's time they had a reunion. His mother Giselle receives a report about the failed attempt on Charlotte's life, learning that the Black Knight is protecting her. She throws her drink at them, calling them useless, and she thinks she will need to handle it herself. But at that moment, Haruto arrives, instantly taking out her men with his barriers. Giselle wonders how he made it into her castle, which should be protected by barriers, but Haruto calls them weak, saying he just broke through them. Giselle prepares to deal with him, and Haruto is surprised she can use 3 spells in a row. He gets trapped in a sphere of water, starting to drown, but he uses a barrier to help him jump out. Giselle follows up with ice magic, which Haruto is able to defend against, so she then blasts him with her fire magic. Haruto drops to the ground, and Giselle starts to glow, saying he was no challenge, but Haruto just gets back up, brushing off the attack, and Giselle wonders who he is. Haruto starts to retaliate, attacking with a barrage, and Giselle struggles to defend herself. She thinks he is even stronger than the Demon King, and she starts to run out of mana, but she charges at him with her sword, and Haruto fights using his own sword. Giselle gets on top of him, thinking she is unrivaled with the sword, but Haruto ends up disarming her. He prepares to punish her, creating a collar around her neck, and he tells her she will lose her head if she tries to take it off. She wonders what he wants, and Haruto tells her he has one demand, telling her to keep her hands off Charlotte and his family, warning her what will happen if she disobeys. 5 years later, things have remained peaceful, and we see Charlotte playing out in the snow. Haruto finds it too cold outside, so he just wants to go back to his room. He wonders if Flight is cold in her outfit, and we see her shaking, but she claims to be fine. Haruto can see through her lie, so he gives her a new outfit and tells her to speak up if she has a problem. Charlotte tells him about a special move that she thought of, saying she isn't strong enough to use it, so she asks him to try it out. She explains how to do it, and he thinks it's ridiculous, but he can't say no to her. He prepares his magic, performing a chant that he finds embarrassing, and he ends up drilling a huge hole in the ground. Charlotte is impressed, and Haruto is glad he could make her happy, but their parents suddenly appear, wondering what's going on. So Haruto quickly uses his magic to create the Black Knight, who flies away, and he blames the hole on him, saying the Black Knight was passing by and showed off his special attack. Charlotte quickly agrees with the explanation, and their father decides not to look into it. As Charlotte continues to play, Haruto asks his father how things have been going. His father mentions how the queen hasn't appeared in public over the last few years, but he is glad there have been no more attempts on Charlotte's life. He has heard rumors that the queen wears a slave collar now, so he wonders if that has something to do with it. Haruto is just glad everything is peaceful, and he thinks he can finally have a relaxing life as a shut-in. But his father suddenly mentions he will need to start going to school in the capital. Haruto is shocked hearing this, and his father says he tried to refuse, but it was beyond his control. Haruto instantly refuses, remembering how bad school was in his past life, and he becomes determined to find a way to get out of it. We see them discussing it further back at the house. His father reveals it was a direct recommendation from the king. Haruto wonders why he would do such a thing, and his father thinks he must have made an impression on Princess Marion when she came to visit them. His father thinks it would also be a good opportunity for him to meet people and see more of the outside world. Haruto doesn't want to cause trouble for him, so he agrees to go. His father mentions he should bring an attendant since he is going to the capital, but he says he can't take Flay since she would end up causing trouble. His mother suddenly appears, volunteering to go with him, but Haruto refuses, saying nobody would be bringing their mother with them, and his father tells him he has 3 months to find someone. Thus Haruto heads back to his room. He thinks of a way to get out of going. He explains the situation to his clone, but the clone also refuses, saying he also wants to be a shut-in. So Haruto explains his plan, wanting his clone to get expelled from the academy for lack of ability since it can't use any magic, and that way it won't cause any trouble for his father. His clone thinks he could do it himself, but Haruto claims he might accidentally use his barrier magic if he is getting picked on. His clone doesn't want to get beaten up, so Haruto promises to use his barrier on him to protect him, and his clone reluctantly agrees to the plan. We learn that over the last 5 years, Haruto built a cabin somewhere far away where he can be a shut-in while his clone covers for him. As Haruto continues to relax, he suddenly remembers that he needs to find an attendant. He goes out for a walk, but he ends up at a village filled with skeletons. They call him their boss, and it turns out they're the skeletons from 5 years ago when he defeated the Queen's summoners. The leader of the skeletons, Johnny, welcomes him to the village. Haruto notices that there are also other monsters, and Johnny explains that they took in strays who had nowhere to go, but he assures Haruto that they are all well behaved. Johnny goes on to show Haruto the other parts of their village, showing him their farms where they grow their food. They have quite an impressive harvest, shocking Haruto because they are doing all this to feed the other monsters. Johnny keeps showing him other areas of the village, and Haruto thinks that if he added flesh, Johnny could be a good attendant. But as he continues to talk about the village, Haruto realizes he talks too much and thinks he would go crazy if he had to listen to him every day. Haruto takes his leave, and he tries to relax by the river, but we see the golem from 5 years ago is also there. It turns out to be a girl, girl, and she has a crush on him, giving him a flower. Haruto considers choosing her as his attendant, thinking she has a nice personality, but in the end, he thinks she is just too big. He returns to the cabin where Flay wonders what he was talking about when he mentioned an attendant, but he tells her it's not her business, which makes her depressed. The next day, Flay takes Charlotte to visit the village, and she is impressed. Her brother gave all the monsters a place to live. She decides to give the village a name, calling it Pandemonium, and Johnny thinks it's a great name. Meanwhile, in the distant frozen mountains, we see a group of adventurers hunting a blizzard dragon. They manage to injure it, causing it to fly away, but it ended up crashing down and getting swept away by the snow. Haruto learns about this incident from his father, who tells him that the dragon appeared near their borders, and he worries it could enter their territory and go on a rampage, so he wants Flay to help investigate it. Flay says she only takes orders from Haruto, but when Haruto tells her to do it, she mentions that she doesn't know of any blizzard dragons, so she thinks it must be a coward that hid in the mountains while the demons were at war against humans, so she doesn't want to help someone like that. Haruto asks for time to think about it, but when they leave the room, they see Charlotte was eavesdropping, and she feels bad for the dragon, asking Flay to help it, so Flay has no choice but to agree. They head into the mountains, and Haruto manages to find the dragon. The dragon is in bad shape, and the adventurers have caught up to it, but Haruto and Flay arrive just in time. Flay tries to burn them all with her fire, but Haruto protects them just in time, leading them on the ground. Haruto tries to talk with the dragon, but it ignores him and asks Flay why a demon like her would serve a human. Flay explains her story for an hour, and the dragon is surprised Haruto is the reincarnated demon king. But Haruto can't believe Flay still remembers his story. The dragon apologizes for not helping out during the war, saying she doesn't like fighting, and explains that she has just spent the last 300 years living a quiet life in the mountains. Haruto gets excited hearing this, thinking she lived the perfect lifestyle, and he wonders how she spent her days. She says she used to just sleep all day in a cave, but after meeting an adventurer who left a book behind, she would spend her time reading it over and over again. She eventually wanted to read other books, so she would transform into a human and sneak into a village where she could get books and take them back to her cave. But she was eventually discovered, and the adventurers ended up burning all of her books. Flay is brought to tears by the story, and she invites her to stay at the village. The dragon happily agrees, and she recognizes Haruto as her master. She transforms into a human, and Haruto quickly gives her some proper clothes. He removes his mask, introducing himself, and the girl doesn't have a name, so he decides to call her Eliza. She is happy to receive this name, but Flay suddenly interrupts, reminding her who's boss because she is Haruto's first servant. Haruto decides to head back, and Eliza is able to fly after him, making Flay jealous. She tries to keep up with them. Haruto introduces Eliza to his family, and his father is surprised he dealt with her so quickly. Haruto asks for her to be able to stay as one of their maids, and his father doesn't mind as long as she follows the rules. While Charlotte is excited to meet her, Flay teaches Eliza how to be a maid, showing how easily a broom can break and telling her to be careful, but Eliza manages to do a great job. They move on to washing dishes, and while Flay breaks every dish, Eliza flawlessly cleans hers. They try cooking next, and Flay uses her fire, but that just ends up burning everything, while Eliza learns from the other maids, and she is praised for learning so quickly, which makes Flay jealous. The family enjoys the food that Eliza made, and they all compliment her on how good it tastes, making Flay depressed. Talia wonders what else Eliza can do, and she mentions she likes to read, which has helped her learn the fundamentals of magic. Talia is impressed, and she suggests for her to be Charlotte's personal maid. The next day, we see Eliza teaching Charlotte how to use magic. Charlotte struggles at first, but she manages to create a fire. Eliza also helps her with her studies, and they start doing everything together. Charlotte quickly improves, and Haruto is amazed seeing Eliza teaching and doing laundry at the same time. Haruto feels bad seeing her do their chores, and Charlotte worries she has been an inconvenience. But Eliza says she has enjoyed serving her, and Charlotte asks her to also be her friend, which Eliza happily agrees to. Haruto thinks about how Eliza is earnest and a quick learner, so he thinks she would make the perfect attendant for him. But he doesn't want to take her away from Charlotte after they just became friends. He thinks about it some more, and he realizes he could use his teleportation magic to allow Eliza to be in two places at once. Later on, we see Charlotte becoming depressed because her favorite show has ended. Eliza tells her it's time to go back, but as they leave, Haruto mentions he is starting school in the capital. Charlotte suddenly thinks of it as a terrifying place, and she tells Eliza to cancel her plans and summon her knights for an emergency meeting. meeting. We see her meeting with Flay, Johnny, and the Golem. They discuss Haruto going to school, and Flay is shocked she didn't know about this. She thinks there's nothing Haruto could learn at the school, since he's the Demon King, but Johnny reminds her they promised not to reveal his secret. Charlotte is shocked hearing this, wondering why Haruto has a secret she doesn't know, but Johnny comforts her, saying she is Haruto's favorite, so he will tell her in no time. They move on with the meeting, and Charlotte mentions a show she watched about a school, but when she asks Haruto what a school is like, he calls it the most terrifying place on earth, so she wonders why he would willingly attend one. Based on the anime she watched, she comes up with a theory, thinking there must be a secret student council pulling the strings and corrupting the other students. She thinks it must be part of an even bigger evil syndicate, and Haruto must be trying to infiltrate and stop them. Flay and Johnny are instantly sold on this theory, so Charlotte thinks they need to start preparing so they can help him. Eliza suggests talking with Haruto, but Charlotte says they shouldn't bother him with everything, saying they need to be able to think for themselves. Eliza ends up reporting everything to Haruto, and he is glad he heard about it before anything happened. Eliza wonders if he's actually fighting against an evil syndicate, and he decides to play along, seeing it as his chance. And he asks for her help, telling her he will need her as his attendant when he goes to school. Eliza is surprised by the request, but she agrees, thinking about what's at stake. And Haruto starts brainstorming ways to get himself kicked out of the school as soon as possible. Haruto prepares to leave for the capital, and his father tells him to take care. We see Haruto has used his magic to hide Eliza's horns and tail, but she is still getting used to it, while Flay begs to be brought along. Meanwhile, at the royal palace, we see Marion as she brings news to Elias that Haruto is on his way. We learn that Elias was the one who recommended Haruto, but he claims he just wants to know how Haruto got so strong. He knows Marion also asked the king on Haruto's behalf, making her embarrassed, and he teases her for being obsessed with Haruto. They go on to talk about a cult that has recently appeared. It's disguised as a branch of the church, and they seem to be extremists that worship demons. Their influence has spread throughout the kingdom and has even infiltrated the academy. There are also rumors they are planning to overthrow the monarchy, and there are an increasing number of nobles joining their cause. Elias has heard rumors that his mother is behind it all, but he doesn't know what she's planning, thinking her behavior has become strange ever since she was given her collar 5 years ago. Everyone knows that the king and queen are no longer on good terms, so Elias thinks his mother must be trying to use the church to take over. He doesn't know what they can do, but Marion gets the feeling that Hari will be the key to changing the situation, thinking that his powers would be enough to defeat an entire organization. At that moment, J-Cell suddenly enters. We learn Marion is just her stepdaughter, and she suddenly starts to choke her, thinking she's being looked down on because of her collar. Elias begs her to stop, and she drops Marion, saying it was just a prank. She also knows about Haruto coming to the capital, and she tells Elias to get along with him, but she actually wants him to find information about the Black Knight, and Elias can only agree. Back at Haruto's cabin, we learn he set up a door near the capital so he can get there when the time comes. Charlotte reminds him he needs to go, and Flay begs him to reconsider. Haruto leaves with Lisa, and they arrive in a forest near the capital. They are still a fair way away, and Lisa knows this is a carriage being chased by a bison. Lisa notes that the bison is usually a herbivore, so she thinks it must be hungry. Haruto decides to help, transforming into the Black Knight. He flies over, but at that moment, the carriage comes loose, and the people are about to fall out. But Haruto catches the boy with his barrier. The bison continues to charge at the carriage, but there's a girl that steps forward. Haruto wonders if she is strong, and the girl tries to stop the bison, but she ends up getting thrown away. The bison prepares to charge at her again, but Haruto stops it just in time. The girl thanks him for his help, introducing herself as Iris, but she is injured, so Haruto instantly heals her with his barrier. Haruto also fixes the carriage, and the girl is amazed by his abilities. Haruto wonders why she is traveling in such a shabby carriage, and Iris says that's all she could afford, but she swears to find a way to repay him. Haruto ends up relocating the bison and even gives it some food. He and Lisa continue on their way, but Lisa notes that Iris gave her a strange feeling, but she can't put her finger on what it is. They manage to make it to the academy, and there's a huge line to get in. As Haruto looks at the other people waiting, his anxiety kicks in, and he just wants to go home. He eventually gets in, and he is given a ton of paperwork to complete. When he makes it to his room, he is completely exhausted, so he quickly makes a door and heads back to his cabin. Charlotte and Flay welcome him back, but he just wants to rest. He tells Flay to make him some food, but Charlotte suggests getting some food in the capital. Flay wants to cook for Haruto, but Charlotte reminds her of their mission, information, and she ends up agreeing as well. Charlotte gives Flay a disguise so people don't find out she's a demon, but Haruto thinks it's too obvious, so he uses his magic to make her ears and tail invisible. They head into the city and enjoy a meal at one of the restaurants. Charlotte then takes out a map of the capital, planning to investigate their surroundings, and she orders Lisa and Flay to survey the surroundings. Haruto wonders what they are planning, but Charlotte says it's just a contingency. Haruto was left to explore with Charlotte, and she calls it a date. Haruto is shocked hearing this, and he thinks about how it would be his first date ever. Even though he thinks she doesn't understand what a date is, he decides to go along with this. They walk around the city together, and Haruto even buys her a necklace. As they continue to explore, Charlotte ends up running into Iris. Haruto rushes over, but Iris gets a familiar feeling from him, and she remembers the feeling of his mana, but Haruto says that's impossible, revealing he's only level 2. Iris apologizes for her mistake, but she rushes off because she has an interview. As Charlotte watches Iris leave, she also notes that she felt something strange from her. We learned Haruto's clone has been covering for him at the academy, but the Khan tells Haruto there is a proficiency exam before the entrance ceremony, but he refuses to take it because he's been miserable being stuck at the academy. Haruto thinks that if he does terribly, it could be the perfect chance to get kicked out. We see him sneaking around the academy, trying to avoid any social interaction, but he's caught by a professor named Palco. The professor guides him inside, taking him to a lecture room, and Haruto thinks about what it's like to start at a new school. But this just makes him depressed. Haruto is determined to fail at all costs, and the professor gives him his test. He actually has no idea how to answer the questions, so he just puts down he has no clue. There's a section about barrier magic, which he answers properly, thinking he can't make it too obvious he's trying to fail. There's also a section on ancient magic, and Haruto remembers the books where he would read about it, accidentally answering the questions without thinking. The professor tells him he also needs to do a mana assessment, but Haruto thinks there's no point since he's just going to be level 2. The professor says it's just their procedure, and Haruto thinks it will be a good chance to show how weak he is. Haruto is led to another room where he meets Tereta, a small doctor. She's the ancient magic researcher at the school and warns him not to get cocky just because he was recommended by the king. She says she'll send him packing if he rubs her the wrong way, which actually excites Haruto. Tereta checks his test answers, finding them intriguing. During the mana assessment, Haruto expects to be at level 2 but ends up shattering the crystal ball with his immense energy, surprising everyone. Though Haruto fears Tereta's anger, she admires his power and boldness in admitting his lack of knowledge on the test. She's impressed by his understanding of barriers and ancient magic and offers to take him on as her apprentice. But he declines. He confides in his clone, who's annoyed at his good impression but encourages him not to give up. At the entrance ceremony, Charlotte gives the clone a gun for protection since he lacks magic and is taking Haruto's place. Haruto rushes back to his room afterward, intending to avoid popular students. However, he's mistakenly addressed by Schneider, the vice president, who becomes irritated when Haruto pretends to be unwell. Schneider attacks, but Haruto's barrier protects him. When Schneider persists, Haruto shoots him in self-defense and flees. Haruto learns of the incident and sends his clone home to rest. He receives a duel request, which he tries to decline, but the girl insists it would disgrace his family. Haruto frets over how to avoid the duel without harm. He observes Iris attempting to resolve the situation but is horrified when Schneider demands she strip and dance. Unable to bear it, Haruto intervenes as the Black Knight, confronting Schneider in another dimension. He immobilizes Schneider and admonishes him for his behavior, leaving a pen in his shoulder as punishment. Schneider vows revenge as Haruto vanishes. Back in the room, Schneider's friend's attempts to heal him only cause more pain, and Schneider swears vengeance. The next day, Haruto attracts the attention of all the other students, and they wonder if he's really only level 2 because he defeated Schneider in a single hit. He manages to get away, but he gets mad, thinking his plan to get expelled isn't going well. As he walks past some other students, he realizes rumors are starting to spread about him, and the girls even think he is cute. He starts running back to his room, but he's stopped by Tereta, and he instantly rejects her without listening to what she has to say. She insists for him to join her lab, but Haruto just claims he forgot what they talked about, and he tries to leave. Tereta goes on to explain it to him again, saying that at the academy, there are 2 courses that he must choose from. There's the night course, where students learn the practical use and application of magic, and it's designed for those who want to become knights and serve the country. The other is the Scholar course, and Toretta explains he will get to just work in a lab and invent new ways to use magic. She thinks it would be perfect for him since he's interested in ancient magic, but Haruto thinks he would just join a different lab. At that moment, Elias suddenly appears, rushing at him, but Haruto easily restrains him, not recognizing who he is. But Marion also appears, and he's surprised Elias has gotten so much bigger. He wonders what they want from him, and Elias tries to be friendly with him, but Haruto just ignores him and talks to Marion. She asks him if he has chosen a course yet, and she asks him to join the lab that she's in. Elias also wants to be in Haruto's class, but Toretta claims that Haruto belongs to her. Elias gets into an argument with her, but he realizes who she is and warns Haruto to avoid her, saying her research is useless, and that she gets into trouble with the other professors. But Toretta claims he is just not smart enough to understand her research. The three wonder what Haruto is going to pick, but Iris suddenly appears, saying she has business with Haruto. Haruto doesn't know what she wants, but he sees it as his opportunity to get away, so he claims he made plans with her and quickly runs off, while Marion gets jealous, wondering what relationship they have. Haruto manages to get away, and he asks Iris what she wants. She wonders if he's really the same person from the previous day, claiming he feels completely different. Haruto is shocked that she can tell the difference between him and his clone, and he reflexively puts up a barrier. Iris can feel the barrier as well, and Haruto becomes suspicious of her, asking why she thinks he is different. She says that although he's the same on the surface, she notes that he had no magic power the previous day, but now his power is overwhelming. Haruto remembers when he first met Iris, and she remarked on his powerful abilities, leading him to wonder if she might be a demon. She assures him she's human, but Haruto still feels uncertain about her. Despite this, he asks her to accept both of his forms as the same person. Iris apologizes for causing trouble and thanks him for his help, then asks to be his friend. Haruto is taken aback but agrees, and Iris takes it as a yes, feeling happy to have her first friend. Curious about why she wants to be friends, Haruto listens as Iris shares her story of being abandoned as a baby and mistreated at a monastery. She explains that her lack of common sense and social skills stems from her isolated upbringing. When Haruto reveals he also lacks friends, Iris sees an opportunity for them to learn together. Haruto, realizing Iris could help him at the academy, decides becoming her friend might not be a bad idea. They agree to take the same class with Toretta. Meanwhile, at the cabin, Charlotte is depressed since Haruto left, and Flay wants to be with him. Sensing something wrong, Charlotte decides to check on him, leaving Flay behind. Lisa praises Flay's adaptability, which she attributes to her previous job working for the Demon King. Flay recounts the Demon King's dream of peace between humans and demons, his sacrifice, and her suspicion that Haruto might be the reincarnation of the Demon King, Iris Villia. When Haruto introduces himself, Flay reveals Iris's full name, causing surprise. Haruto decides to call her Iris, and they discuss choosing classes together. As they head to Haruto's room, he worries about misunderstandings, especially when Charlotte mistakes Iris for his girlfriend. After finishing their work, Haruto covers Iris's eyes to shield her from the gate, causing her to wonder about his sister's whereabouts. 1 week later, we see Haruto waking up back at the cabin, and he is depressed because his classes are finally about to begin. Charlotte gives him his schedule, and we learn he is only in the C class, but Charlotte tells him that the classes are regularly shuffled based on his results, so she thinks he will make it to the A class in no time. But Haruto seems to have other plans. He's suddenly surprised when he notices the classes that she chose for him, and it turns out she chose all the most advanced classes for him, thinking everything else would be too easy for him. But Haruto decides to use this to his advantage, thinking that the other students will think he is cocky for choosing all the advanced classes, and he thinks it will help him get kicked out when he fails. Haruto heads to class with Iris, and she can't believe that he's only in the C class, revealing that she's in class. So when Haruto gets to his class, everyone stares at him, and he remembers it's because of the drama he got into with Schneider, so he tries to keep a low profile. The teacher begins the class, telling them that since they're in class C, they are able to move up or down to other classes, so he decides to start with a test. Haruto thinks it's his chance to show how useless he is, but when he gets the test, he finds that it's super easy. He compares it to the material that Charlotte learned when she was still a child. Haruto thinks that the teacher must be giving them an easy task to help them build confidence. He thinks it would be too obvious if he got everything wrong, so he aims to just pass with a 60. After the test is over, the teacher notes that everyone did poorly with an average score of only 20. He isn't surprised at the result because the average score in Class B is only 50, but he's amazed by Haruto's results. Haruto wonders what's going on, wondering how the other students could score so poorly with such easy questions. But he comes to the realization that it's not that they're dumb, but it's because he based his assumption on Charlotte, and she's just too much of a prodigy. The teacher thinks he's amazing and tells him to move straight to the A class. The next day, he attends his new class, and he's immediately grabbed by Iris and Elias. They fight over who gets to sit with him, but the teacher calls them out for causing a scene. She knows they are only in their first year, and she looks down on them for taking her advanced class, warning them that she will kick them out as soon as they get anything wrong. She also knows that Haruto and Iris are taking Toretta's lab, so she has an even bigger grudge against them. The teacher introduces herself as Oratoria, and she starts giving them a lesson about elemental theory. She calls Iris up for a demonstration, and we see she has an affinity with every element. Oratoria is amazed, seeing this, and she immediately tries to recruit Iris to her lab, but Iris declines the offer. Oratoria goes on to explain that everyone has a main element, and the others are considered sub-elements. She explains that it's hard to quantify a person's affinity for sub-elements, but Haruto has a status skill that allows him to see everything. Oratoria explains that it's hard to qualify sub-elements because it's possible for the value to change when performing different spells, even with the same element. Haruto thinks it has something to do with the hidden properties, and Oratoria suddenly approaches him, wondering how he knows about such a thing. We see that he just read it from his status window, and he explains that people can have hidden properties attached to their elements, which can boost certain types of skills. Oratoria is amazed by his insight, wondering how he could know about such things because it's on the cutting edge of research, and only a few people should know about it, so she immediately tries to get Haruto to join her lab, but he also refuses. Later that day, we see Haruto and Iris arrive at Toretta's lab, but we learn that Haruto became too exhausted, so he swapped places with his clone. Toretta is happy to have them there, but it seems she's just using them to fill the requirements so that she can keep operating her lab, and she decides to have a party. Clone Haruto thinks about sneaking away, but Polka suddenly screams as he discovers a tied-up Schneider. Toretta reveals that she forgot about him, saying he came to get help from her, but she thinks it's the perfect chance to research ancient magic because she knows his shoulder is being affected by barrier magic. We learn that ancient magic is different from modern magic because it doesn't require a constant supply of mana. Toretta notes that the barrier in Schneider's shoulder has already been there for 2 days, so she recognizes it as ancient magic. Iris can't believe there's someone who can use ancient magic in the current age, and Tyrannos starts slapping Schneider to find out who cast the spell on. Schneider can't give them much information, and Toretta thinks he must be scared about revealing their identity, so she theorizes that it's the work of the Black Knight. She finds it strange that the Black Knight appeared in the capital around the same time that Haruto arrived, so she starts to suspect him. She grabs onto him, begging for him to teach her about ancient magic, but the real Haruto suddenly appears as the Black Knight. He tells Toretta that he has no relation to Haruto, and that he's just in the capital to bring justice. Toretta is excited to meet him, and she thinks that he punished Schneider because he is a part of the shady cult, but Haruto is just surprised that such an organization actually exists. He plays along with it, and he reminds Schneider to call off their duel if he wants to be free from his spell. Schneider reluctantly agrees, and Haruto prepares to leave, but Toretta suddenly restrains him. She refuses to let him go without answering her questions, but he easily breaks free and traps her with his barrier instead. Polka tells her to apologize, but Toretta is just too interested in Haruto's spell. However, she suddenly needs to pee, begging Haruto to free her, and she promises to leave him alone. After this encounter, the group continues with their welcome party. Toretta gets them to drink, and Iris ends up getting drunk, trying to get clone Haruto to drink as well, pouring him a cup, but she ends up just drinking it herself. She then suddenly thanks him for being her friend and joining the lab with her, but she then just falls asleep. Toretta is also a bit drunk, and she wonders if he knows why Iris is interested in ancient magic. Haruto has no idea, so Toretta explains that when Iris's magic was measured, she had an affinity with all the elements, but her level was only at level 5. Toretta notes that although Iris is still growing, her level is unusually low for her age, and it's possible that it might not increase any further. So that's why she is interested in ancient magic, because the people from that time were said to be over level 100. So she hopes to discover something that can help her level up. Toretta ends up falling asleep as well, and clone Haruto decides to call it for the night. Meanwhile, we see Schneider in his mansion throwing a tantrum over having to withdraw from the duel. He thinks it will damage his reputation, and he can't accept being accepted as the next future king. We learn that his father joined the cult in order to overthrow the monarchy and make Schneider the next king. He refuses to let Haruto win, so he orders his assassin squad to kill Haruto and his friends, but we see he is being watched. The assassins approach the lab, and they know that everyone is asleep. We see that the assassins have brought over 20 elite men, so they are confident they will succeed. They immediately carry out the operation, rushing toward the lab, but it seems to be protected by a barrier. The assassins look around the whole building but find that it's completely protected. One of the men tries attacking with a blade, but it has no effect at all. The door suddenly appears, and the man tries to check it out, but he ends up getting pulled inside. The captain orders his men to destroy the door, but their spells just get swallowed up. There are even more doors that appear, and the men start getting picked off one by one. Haruto makes his appearance, and the captain tries to attack him, but just gets frozen by Haruto's barrier. Haruto ends up bringing all the men back to Schneider, asking him why he ordered the assassins. Schneider denies everything, but Haruto shows him a recording of him ordering the assassins. Haruto prepares to give him another punishment, but Schneider suddenly injects himself with a syringe, transforming him into a demon. Haruto is smashed out of the mansion, and he wonders how he's going to deal with Schneider. He suddenly gets a call from Charlotte, saying she got the feeling he was on duty. She is surprised to see he is fighting a monster, and Haruto explains that it was the evil syndicate that transformed Schneider into a monster. Charlotte feels bad for him, so she asks Haruto to save him, and Haruto has no choice but to agree. He dodges Schneider's attacks, but he struggles against his strength. He tries attacking with his barrier, but he just ends up getting clapped. Haruto is about to be crushed, but he uses his barriers to free himself and seal Schneider's arms. However, Schneider rips his own arms off, but he's able to instantly regenerate them. Haruto doesn't know how to deal with him, but Charlotte points out that he became smaller after regenerating, so Haruto thinks he can return Schneider back to normal by cutting off his overgrown body. Haruto uses a new technique, and he creates thousands of swords in the sky. Charlotte is amazed to see his new skill, and Haruto rains his blades down onto Schneider, cutting away his overgrown body. Schneider returns to his original form, and Haruto tries to continue their conversation, but he just ends up running off. Haruto wakes up, and he thinks about how the party was kind of fun. Haruto teases him for enjoying it, but the clown thinks that it's an improvement from their previous life, and Haruto also agrees, thinking about the people that they've met. The next day, we see Flay and Lisa gathering information in the capital. They are approached by a group of shady men who offer to help them, and they are led into an alleyway, but they just end up beating up the men and get the information they were after. We see them in another one of Charlotte's meetings. They have learned more about the power struggle for the crown, and Charlotte thinks that the capital is headed for trouble. Liz airs her doubts, but Johnny reminds her of Haruto's fight the previous night. Charlotte replays the highlights, and they all admire Haruto's new technique. Charlotte thinks Schneider must be a part of the evil syndicate, and she declares that it's their time to make a move, so she starts making plans for them to infiltrate the academy so they can expose them from within. The others all agree with her, but we see Haruto watching them, and he can't believe what they are getting up to. He decides to let them have their fun while he continues to watch over them and make sure nothing disturbs his peaceful life. Thanks for watching.